I hated storms when I was a kid. Whenever a big storm hit, I'd run and hide. Dark clouds and thunder and lightning and wind scared me to death. One of the most memorable storms I've ever experienced happened at the worst possible time. I was out sailing with my uncle on Lake Michigan. It seemed like a perfect day. It was sunny and calm. But out on the big lake, storms can come up almost instantly. The sky was suddenly full of black clouds, and the wind started blowing 35 to 50 miles per hour. It was scary. The power of the water was immense, and we were totally at its mercy. As we finally landed at the dock, barely keeping the boat from crashing, we all felt a great sense of relief that we had gotten home. Jesus and his disciples once found themselves in a similar predicament. You've probably heard or read the story dozens of times. They had ventured out onto the Sea of Galilee in one of their small fishing boats in order to get away from the crowds. Their goal was to cross to the other side of the sea, which is about a 5-mile trip. Now, to give you a little bit of context here, the Sea of Galilee is in the northern part of Israel. At the top of the sea, it's 600 feet below sea level, hunkered down in a valley surrounded by mountains, cliffs, and hills. This is a pretty unique location for a sea. The cold air on top of the lake meets the warm air that comes rolling down out of the hills, and it can cause some incredible storms to whip up out of nowhere. So these veteran fishermen and their friends are somewhere out in the middle of the lake when the storm of the century hits. They freak out. In Luke, we read that they were in great danger. Mark tells us that the boat was being swamped. These guys are in trouble. Waves are breaking over the sides of the boat and filling it with water. This boat is going to sink. It's a pretty obvious parallel to our lives. We all face storms all the time. Usually not literal ones, but just like that storm in the Sea of Galilee, they often come up out of nowhere. You back into a parked car. The dog makes a mess on the living room carpet. You open the box of your kid's new toy and realize what some assembly required really means. Your teenager comes home drunk. Your in-laws show up unexpectedly. Your husband has an affair. The doctor calls and says there are some irregularities in your blood work. No one is exempt from storms. We can't prevent them. And usually, the best we can do is just ride them out. Some storms look terrible at the outset, but once they're past, no big deal. Others seem less threatening, but by the time they're over, we can't believe how much damage they've caused. But whatever the cause, or the duration, or the severity, one thing is certain. Storms, more than almost anything else, can define and shape our lives. They reveal who we really trust. My father-in-law just died. After a long battle with heart disease, his body finally couldn't take it. I drove out to New Jersey with my family to be by his bedside and say our final goodbyes. It was sad to see a man who had been so vibrant and active and successful stuck in bed, almost unable to talk. This was a storm for all of us. For me, my kids, and most of all, my wife. Saying goodbye to a parent is one of the most difficult things many of us will ever have to do. But the real hero in this story is my mother-in-law. In the midst of this storm, the one she had committed herself to in her wedding vows decades before, she trusted Jesus. In these final hours, she clung to him. She clung to the hope that Jesus was bigger than even this, the ultimate storm of death. When she came out of the hospital room, after her husband of over 50 years had passed, her words were, "Good news, Dad has passed. The storm is over. Jesus has him now." The disciples were terrified and sinking in the Sea of Galilee, but they rode out the storm of their lives safely. With Jesus in their boat, they tangibly experienced the good news right in the middle of the wind and the waves. Centuries later, my mother-in-law, in a hospital room in New Jersey, did the same. Do you have any storms in your life right now? Is Jesus in the boat with you? Trust him, and you too can find the good news in your storm.